Hello everybody, welcome back to Screenstars. I'm here today to bring you my review for the 2023 horror sequel, The Nun 2. The film is directed by Michael Chavez and it stars Tessa Farmiga, Jonas Bloquet and Storm Reed. Now, the film is obviously a direct sequel to The Nun. It once again stars Tessa Farmiga, the younger sister of Vera Farmiga from the Conjuring films. And this time it's set in 1956. It's set 2 or 3 years after the events of the first Nun film. This time round, Irene is sent to investigate at a like a school in the middle of France. There are some unexplained deaths. They suspect Valak may be involved again, and after surviving her last encounter with Valak, the church believes she can do some good. She heads off there with a new sister called Deborah, who is new to the nunnery, a bit of a rebel, and she goes with her to help. Once there, she discovers that Maurice, otherwise known as Frenchie, is there and has got a direct link to Valak and a direct link to these deaths. And she has to get her hands on a religious relic that Valak is trying to get hold of, and if she gets hold of it, it'll make her unbearably powerful. Right, what are my thoughts on The Nun 2? Well, The Nun, I remember when the first Nun came out, and I am a big fan of the Conjuring movie universe, if you like. I enjoy pretty much all of them. There's none that I think you could describe as terrible films or anything like that. But when the first Nun film came out, I remember it got a little bit of a critical mauling, even though it did well financially, I think anyway. It did pretty well. But I've never really massively disliked the first Nun. In actual fact, I think there are some entertaining things to it. I think it's fairly limited in some aspects. So I was hopeful that this sequel would actually expand on this demon Valak, for us to learn more about Valak and expand on the characters that we're introduced to in the first film and give us a better story, mainly, I think. And I think it actually does. It ticks all them boxes for me. Now, I'm not here to say that this is the horror film of the year, because it isn't. It's not even close to being the best horror film in the Conjuring universe. But quite a lot of the times, you know, they've delivered strong sequels, direct sequels. Like the first Conjuring obviously was excellent. Conjuring 2 was very good, which was our first introduction to Valak. The first Annabelle film was like the first Nun film, quite critically panned by many. And the second one, Annabelle Creation, was a substantial improvement on the first one. And I think that's what we get here. I do think this is a fairly substantial improvement on the first one, but not exactly a scarefest either. Don't get me wrong, there are some really nicely crafted scares in this film. I think the director, Michael Chavez, he's really learning his craft very well. This is his third Conjuring universe film. He directed The Curse of La Llorona. He also directed Annabelle Comes Home. No, the third Conjuring film, The Conjuring 3. And I certainly quite enjoyed The Conjuring 3, even though it's the weakest of the 3 Conjuring films. But this is probably his best addition to the Conjuring universe. It's got that great gothic feel to it, and there's just something about Valak, really, that it just makes it all really very unnerving. But cleverly, they kind of keep Valak for the big chunk of this film in the shadows, only hinting at Valak's presence, or only in regards to visually seeing Valak. The majority of the scares and the possession type stuff comes through Frenchie, who is possessed by Valak, which you kind of know anyway, because the first Nun film directly links to a clip that they show at the beginning of the Conjuring film. So I like the way these Conjuring films all kind of link into each other. So I do think they were quite smart here in how they presented Valak in this film. They don't overexpose Valak, and when she's on screen, Valek, well, I say she, it's a demon, obviously. It feels a real credible threat and some very, very scary moments indeed. And there's a really creative scene where Irene is chasing a child out of Ali's, and there's like a newsstand, where they've got like magazines on a news rack, and the wind's blowing them. And then the scene kind of is blowing these pages about until it finally forms an image. I thought it was really, really nicely done. Even though you know what's coming, it doesn't change the end result, really. It still makes it really creepy and pretty damn scary. I thought the last 20 minutes or so of the film, maybe a little bit more, was nicely put together, nicely constructed with some intense scares. And I think, for me, one of the things that let certainly the first Nun film down was it just felt like it was just there, really, to give you cheap scares at times. It didn't feel like there was a lot of thought put into the story. This time round, I think there was far more thought put into the story. I think the children's school is a much better place, you know what I mean? Because that fear of kids getting, corrupted by the demon and all this kind of stuff, it's just a better setting. It all felt a little bit too gothic in the first one. And I thought it worked well because I think this character of Irene, played by Tessa Farmiga, is a really clever character in the sense of you never really feel like she's in control. She never really feels like she's in control. She has no idea what she's going to do. And it does kind of surprise you when the church decide to send her back into the trenches, if you like, with no real backup. So it's interesting how she's got to kind of use her brain and investigation skills to figure out what to do, how to get the better of Valek. Now, you could say as well that it's fairly lazy writing, giving us another religious artifact that, everybody's searching for. You've seen it time and time again in movies like this. It's a tired mechanic, but it doesn't necessarily not work in here because they kind of cleverly tie it into not only Valek, but also Irene as well. There's a direct link to her as well with this artifact, so we'll learn more about her and her past. And obviously, I think this is obviously going to lead to potentially. Clearly, it will depend on how much money this film makes, I suspect, but there's clearly more scope for a third one because there is a mid-credit scene at the end. You've probably heard. Obviously, I'm not going to spoil it, but it does suggest that we're either going to get a third one or Valek is going to tie into another part of the Conjuring universe as well. So I thought this was a solid outing, if I'm honest. I don't think there's any major flaws with this one. It's a nice addition to the Conjuring franchise. It feels, fairly formulaic, I suppose, at times. But you could say that about many of the Conjuring films. They're just highly polished, very cinematic, like horror films. They don't feel gritty or edgy or anything like that. They're almost written by committee, but they're done quite well as well for the most part. So yeah, if you're a fan of the Conjuring films, I don't think you're going to be massively disappointed here. If you enjoyed the first Nun film, you're probably going to be very, very happy with this sequel. I certainly enjoy it myself for the most part. So thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoyed the review. I will, of course, be back with more reviews and content on the channel very, very soon.